Our New Testament reading comes from Matthew chapter 8, verses 18 to 22. Now, when Jesus saw a crowd around him, he gave orders to go over to the other side. And the scribe came up and said to him, Teacher, I will follow you wherever you go. And Jesus said to him, Foxes have holes, and birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. Another of the disciples said to him, Lord, let me first go and bury my father. And Jesus said to him, Follow me, and leave the dead to bury their own dead.
I've broken it. Thank you. Thank you, Caro. In a book by a woman called Raina Wynn, who is describing a very personal story of herself and her partner and their growing connection with land and walking. She writes at one point, it was the land, the earth, the deep humming underground to my very being. And Ian, coming a little further forward in time, thank you for the contextual history of pilgrimage. But today, there seem to be so many motivations, spiritual and sacred, for doing pilgrimage. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, I mean, the current revival is fascinating because, as we were saying before, with the Reformation, certainly in Scotland, pilgrimage ceased here, as it did in all of Protestant Europe, not in Catholic Europe, of course. But the last 30 years or so have seen this extraordinary revival of interest right across Europe in pilgrimage, but not least here in Scotland. And I would say in many ways we've led the field. And the motivations have been many and various, some of them echoing, I think, what I said about medieval motivations. I've often talked to people. I spent a day on Iona asking people as they came into the Abbey what their motivations for coming there were, and I've done other research and other people have done research. Still, a lot of people would say pilgrimage is a way of trying to reorientate their lives in a simpler direction. They might not talk about penitence and absolution and use all those phrases that they might have used in the Middle Ages, but there's a sense that perhaps, and it was very well incarnated in what you were saying about the difference between individualism and the kind of more communal ethic, that we lead very individualistic lives. Pilgrimage brings us together with other people. One of the key things about being a pilgrim is you're stripped of all your status. I remember when Lucy, my wife, and I did a pilgrimage in Norway, we joined a group of pilgrims going up to Nidaros, which is the shrine of St. Olaf. And when we joined them, the pastor, the Lutheran pastor who was leading us, saying, we don't want to know who you are in terms of your background. It doesn't matter who you are, you're all pilgrims. And it's wonderful. You're not there as somebody with a particular background or status. You're all pilgrims. So it's a wonderful way, I think, of being together, and you in some sense lose your individualism. So people do it for that reason. People do it often to give thanks for something that's happened that's good in their life, to mark a change in their life. A lot of people go on a pilgrimage when they retire or when they reach a significant birthday. I think I did it on the St. Cuthbert's Way for my 50th birthday, a very long time ago. But people sometimes do a pilgrimage for that reason. Sometimes to remember a loved one. Some of you will know the very powerful novel, which I'm completely forgetting the name of, but you'll probably know it, about the person who does the Camino.
Walks with a stick.
No, not Walks with a Stick. Anyway, it'll come back to me. But sorry, but it's a wonderful novel. Actually, he's not doing it to remember somebody who's died, but he comes across someone who's in a terminal illness, and it's very powerful. It'll come back to me by a very well-known novelist. But there are all sorts of reasons, I think. I should have just mentioned, and it's another reason why people do it, I think, as a kind of spiritual exercise. The one group I didn't talk about when we were talking about the origins were the Celtic monks. And our kind of ancestors here in Scotland, who had a very different view of pilgrimage from the Middle Ages people who would go off to a holy shrine to get a sort of buzz from being close to a saint. The Celtic monks believed in a perpetual pilgrimage, a perpetual exile. And that was the way they witnessed to Christ, witnessed to Jesus, the Son of Man who has nowhere to lay his head. They left the comforts of home. We see it with Columba leaving Ireland. We see it with Columbanus going right across the continent of Europe. We see it with all those Celtic monks who go off to remote islands and skelligs off Ireland and the Hebrides. And for them, this is not a matter of getting some sort of spiritual buzz from a holy place. It's a matter of living a life of exile, of radical exile, and renunciation of the comforts and distractions of home. Now, some people, there's an element of that in pilgrimage. Some people obviously are doing it just to get away again, and why not, from things that might be oppressing them or burdens at home. Some people are just going to refresh themselves and have a break. I remember one of my students saying she did it, as it were, to walk in the footsteps of those who'd gone before. And there's this, you read that lovely piece about sort of connecting with the land and the earth. And many people, I think, would say pilgrimage gets them out connecting with the earth. And it's one of the reasons why something like the Fife Pilgrim Way was very strongly supported by Fife Council, and pilgrimage is supported by the Scottish Government, because, as we know, there's a great effort to get people out walking and more exercise, combating obesity and other illnesses which are caused by us not doing enough exercise. So there is that whole sense and the whole revival of interest in the environment and the fragility of the environment. Many people are doing that. But this student saying to me, she was wanting to walk in the footsteps of those who've gone before. My book on the Fife Pilgrim Way is subtitled In the Footsteps of Monks, Miners and Martyrs. And as I researched the Pilgrim Way, I was very conscious of those who had walked before, not just pilgrims, not just the pilgrims going to the shrine of St Andrew or St Margaret in Dunfermline, but the monks, of course, as we know, many monasteries along the way, the miners, those forgotten figures in Fife, particularly in West Fife, where the Pilgrim Way goes through, who had that extraordinary life, a very tough life, and a life which bred a kind of solidarity and a kind of communal experience. And the martyrs, we're very conscious of martyrs, both Catholic and Protestant, but particularly Protestant in these parts. And we also think of the murdered bishop, obviously, in coming through Ceres and being murdered at Sharp, Bishop Sharp at Magus Muir. So I think there's this sense of walking in the footsteps, but not walking to look back. Again, walking to look forward. And I think one of the great things about pilgrimage is the way it makes us look forward. I mean, what is very interesting is more and more people now talk of their faith in terms of a pilgrim journey. If 60 years ago, you took polls of people's experience of their faith, and most people would say they'd had a sudden conversion experience, and that was it. Now, most people talk about an ongoing journey. It's as though the road to Emmaus where you'll remember the resurrected Jesus walks with the disciples and they only gradually come to realize who he is more telling now for many people than the road to Damascus, where Paul has his sudden, lightning, blinding conversion. So this sense of pilgrimage as a metaphor for our faith and looking forward rather than looking back. So pilgrimage, yes, we're walking, and when we get on to the Five Pilgrim Way and to Ceres, we're very much conscious of the past here, but we're also conscious of the future. And I think that's what's so exciting about what you're doing here. And as you say, your dream, theming it in terms of a dream. Pilgrimage is not about looking back all the time. It's about going on. I mean, it's beautifully expressed in Timothy Dudley's Smith's, the final verse of it, the Lord for the years, which we'll be singing later. Past put behind us, for the future take us. I'm little aside, I'm absolutely delighted to be singing this hymn because Tim Dudley Smith is an old friend of mine. We went to the same school, not at the same time, I hasten to say. You'll see he was born in 1926. He's still going strong at the age of 96, still writing hymns. I'm regularly in touch with him, and I shall tell him we sung this today. He's a wonderful man, but it's wonderful to be singing his hymn. But this sense of taking us for the future, and that other wonderful hymn by Sidney Carter that we'll sing at the end, One More Step Along the World I Go. This sense I think that pilgrimage has for me is expressing our faith as a journey, as an ongoing thing, not something that has sort of, we've got there and we stop and we just step back and feel it's all done and dusted. It's this wonderful sense of journeying on, I think.